Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and provide a shortcut to being truly well-informed on the topics that matter most.
And today, we're definitely diving deep into one that's, well, it's everywhere, isn't it?
It really is. We're plunging into the conversation around higher education in America. All the debates, the anxieties about cost, about value, purpose.
Yeah, it's a topic that touches nearly every family, every student thinking about their future. What's a degree actually worth these days? What's the real cost?
Exactly. And maybe the biggest question, what is college even for in the 21st century?
His questions feel more urgent now than ever, I think, with costs just soaring, student debt becoming this huge burden, and, the job market changing so fast.
Feels like everyone has an opinion, a strong one usually. But our focus today is on a book and an author who's really laid out a provocative, comprehensive case.
Right. We're looking at the college scam, how America's universities are bankrupting and brainwashing away the future of America's youth. The author is Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk. You might know him from Turning Point USA or his media presence. His arguments definitely get shared around.
So our mission today is really to unpack what's inside that book. Kirk calls it his 10-count indictment against the modern university system. We want to lay out his core arguments, the insights he offers.
And also explore, who Charlie Kirk is, his background, how that shaped his views, because it's pretty relevant here.
Absolutely. And we'll look at why this book struck such a chord with so many people, while also, let's be clear, drawing a lot of criticism.
Right. The goal is to give you a really solid preview.
Yeah.
Enough depth so you can understand his case, the force behind it, and then, decide if you want to read the whole thing yourself.
To really get it, you do need a bit of context on Kirk himself. As you said, co-founder of Turning Point USA, which is a huge conservative organization.
Massive influence, yeah. And he's a major voice in conservative media, known for really challenging the status quo, especially on education and what young people experience on campus.
And his perspective, it isn't just academic theorizing, is it? It comes from direct engagement, being on campuses, talking to students. That definitely gives his book a particular kind of weight in this conversation.
So let's talk about that journey. How did he get here?
Well, Charlie Kirk, he was born in Illinois in 1993, grew up near Chicago. He's described his parents as moderate Republicans.
Okay.
But his own political awakening happened pretty early, middle school, actually. He credits reading the economist Milton Friedman.
Wow, Milton Friedman in middle school. That's pretty intense. Definitely sets a direction.
It does. And he was active politically even in high school, volunteered for a Senate campaign, wrote an essay for Breitbart News when he was just 17, arguing about liberal bias in textbooks. That got him his first media spot.
So he was engaged early on. But the key thing, maybe, regarding this book is his own experience with applying to college, right?
Exactly. This seems really central. He applied to the United States Military Academy at West Point.
Yeah.
Highly competitive, prestigious. He was rejected. That was in 2012. After that, he did briefly attend Harper College, a community college near Chicago.
Okay, so he started.
Yeah, but only for one semester. Then he dropped out, decided to go full-time into political activism instead.
You can really see how that personal story, the rejection, deciding college wasn't his path, how that might fuel his later critique. It gives him that outsider perspective he leverages in the book.
Absolutely. It's not just an abstract critique for him. It feels deeply personal. He didn't just leave higher ed behind. He actively built an alternative path, starting Turning Point USA.
Right, TPUSA. He co-founded that in 2012, the same year he left college. He was only 18. And it's grown massively since then, aimed right at young people, students.
And his methods were pretty unique, weren't they? Those prove me wrong tables on college campuses.
Yeah. Tell us about those. How did that work, and how did it feed into the book?
Well, it was direct engagement. He literally set up a table, maybe with a sign challenging a common campus viewpoint, and just invite students to debate him face to face.
Kind of confrontational, but also very direct.
Very direct. It let him see campus culture firsthand, hear student arguments, maybe identify what he saw as, ideological conformity. He was right there in the mix.
So that experience, being on the ground, you can feel that in the book,
Yeah.
makes the arguments feel more lived.
Definitely. It adds a certain punch, makes it resonate with his audience because it feels like it comes from real firsthand observation, not just reading studies.
And his reach goes way beyond just those campus tables now.
Oh, absolutely. He hosts the Charlie Kirk Show, daily radio show, huge podcast following, plus Turning Point Live, which is a streaming show specifically for Gen Z.
And social media, too. He's pretty big on platforms like TikTok.
Hugely effective there. Videos of his campus tours, debates, One tour, the You're Being Brainwashed tour, apparently generated something like 2 billion social media views.
2 billion. Wow. Okay, so he's definitely got a direct line to young people talking about these exact issues.
Which positions him as a very hands-on, influential critic when he writes a book titled The College Scam.
Now, this wasn't his first book on these themes, was it? He wrote others before.
That's right. He had Time for a Turning Point in 2016, Campus Battlefield in 2018, The MAGA Doctrine in 2020, Right-Wing Revolution. Just recently in 2024, he even has a book set to be released after his death.
Okay, so he's been building this case. But the college scam in 2022, that feels like the main event on this topic for him.
It really does seem to consolidate everything. While the earlier books touched on campus life and conservative ideas, the college scam pulls it all together into this very direct, aggressive 10-count indictment.
And he explicitly calls it that, an indictment.
Yes, he frames it exactly like that, like he's a prosecutor making a case. He identifies higher education as a central battleground.
And the impact. It was a bestseller.
Big time. #1 in several Amazon categories related to education and politics, philosophy and social aspects of education, political commentary. #2 in political conservatism.
And the reader reviews.
Hundreds of them, averaging 4.6 out of 5 stars. That's significant.
It really is. It shows his message clearly landed with a large audience. It wasn't just a fringe thing. It hit a nerve, which makes understanding his arguments really important, whether you agree or not.
Absolutely. It's a major voice in a huge national debate.
Okay, so let's get into the core of it, the indictment itself. How does he structure this case?
Well, framing it as that 10-count indictment is key. He's not suggesting small fixes. His goal, he states pretty clearly, is to convince most young Americans that going for a traditional 4-year degree is basically an expensive mistake.
Not necessary for most people, in his view.
Exactly, and potentially harmful.
But he makes a distinction, doesn't he, about education versus college?
Yes, and this is crucial to understanding his stance. He often says, I am very pro-education, but I am most definitely anti-college.
So not against learning, not against knowledge.
Not at all. He's targeting the institution, the current system, especially the standard American 4-year university model.
Does he make exceptions? Like for doctors or lawyers?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He acknowledges that for certain highly specialized fields, you obviously need the specific degree, the credentials. That's unavoidable.
But for the average young person?
For the vast majority, he sees other paths as being much better. He really wants to break that default assumption that college is the automatic next step, the only real path to a good life.
Okay, so how does he break down this indictment? You said 3 pillars.
Right. He organizes his counts against the system into 3 main areas. First, the economic argument, the money, the debt, the payoff or lack thereof.
Pillar 1, the economics, got it.
Second, Pillar 2 is about the quality of the education itself. What are students actually learning, or not learning, as he argues, and how well does it prepare them?
And the third.
Pillar 3 tackles the campus culture. This is where he gets into indoctrination, free speech issues, that kind of thing.
Economics, quality, culture. Okay, let's dig into Pillar 1, the economic argument. He doesn't mince words here, does he?
No, he absolutely pulls no punches. He calls colleges a federally sponsored scam. And he seems to mean that literally, not just as a catchy phrase.
Literally a scam. How does he justify that?
He says, explicitly in the book, I believe they are defrauding. His core argument is that the whole financial model is built on and inflated by taxpayer-backed federal student lending.
Okay, so the availability of federal loans is the key mechanism.
That's his argument. He says easy access to these loans basically shields universities from normal market forces.
Meaning?
Well, think about any other product. If the price gets too high, people start buying, or they look for cheaper alternatives, right? That forces producers to either lower prices or offer better value.
Okay, basic supply and demand.
Exactly. But with student loans readily available, Kirk argues, students can essentially pay whatever tuition universities charge. There's less pressure on the universities to control costs because the money keeps flowing, backed by the government.
And the result of that, according to Kirk,
he points to what he calls massive administrative bloat. Universities spending huge amounts of money, not necessarily on teaching or core academics, but on layers of administration and sometimes lavish amenities.
Like what kind of amenities?
He gives examples like luxury daycare centers, even ones with lazy rivers.
Yeah.
Yes, lazy rivers, gaming theaters, Fancy new dorms that look more like resorts?
Lazy rivers. Seriously.
That's an example sometimes cited. And he points to the growth in administrative staff roles like director of communications, chief diversity officers, student success coaches, expanded marketing teams.
So more bureaucracy, less focus on the actual teaching.
That's his claim. He cites data showing administrative positions grew way faster than faculty positions over recent decades, something like 160% growth in admin versus only 63% for faculty between 76 and 2018.
Wow. And all this contributes to tuition going up and up.
He argues it's a direct cause. This spending, this bloat, funded by rising tuition, which is enabled by those federal loans, he sees it as a cycle that benefits the institution, not necessarily the student.
And some critics might point to things like athletic departments funding improvements.
Right, and Kirk might counter that even that money could be better spent, or that tuition dollars are often funding things unrelated to the core educational mission, creating waste.
Okay, so that's the cost side. What about the payoff? The return on investment for the student?
This is the other side of the economic coin for Kirk. He highlights what he sees as really negative outcomes. High dropout rates, for one.
How high?
He notes figures suggesting around 40% of students who start a four-year degree don't actually finish it. That's a lot of people starting, maybe taking on debt, but not getting the credential.
And for those who do graduate?
He focuses hard on underemployment. He cites evidence that a large chunk of graduates end up in jobs that, well, don't actually require a college degree.
So they have the debt, but the job they get doesn't necessarily justify it.
Precisely. He quotes government stats suggesting maybe only 27% of grads get a job directly related to their major. So for many, he argues, it's a credential that didn't deliver the promised financial return, leaving them in a debt trap.
And that debt trap? I mean, that resonates, doesn't it? The average student loan debt is over $30,000 now. It impacts huge life choices for young adults.
Absolutely. It raises that fundamental question for you, the listener, or your kids. Is this investment truly worth it, especially weighed against the risk and the actual outcomes for many?
So, given this pretty bleak economic picture he paints, what's his advice? What does he tell young people to do instead?
His counsel is very practical, very direct. He says, look, seriously, consider alternatives. Maybe go to a community college, get specific skills, or look at a tech school.
Trade schools, things like that.
Exactly. Things that lead directly to marketable skills, often with much less debt. He also strongly recommends taking a gap year.
A gap year? Why?
To gain some real-world experience, figure out what you're actually interested in. Or seek out an unpaid internship, learn by doing. Test the waters before committing tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So it boils down to minimize debt, learn by doing, and figure out your path before you borrow money.
That's the core of it. He puts it bluntly. The worst thing you can do is go borrow money ahead of time when you're not really sure what sort of skill you want. Test the fit first. It's a very pragmatic approach.
Okay, that leads perfectly into Pillar 2. If the economics are questionable, what about the actual education? What are students getting for all this money in debt?
Right. And here, Kirk makes some equally bold claims. He argues flat out that colleges do not educate anymore.
Wow, that's a statement.
And even more starkly, he claims college ruins the ability to think and reason.
Ruins it? How does he back that up?
He points to what he sees as a failure to prepare students for the real world, both professionally and intellectually. He cites feedback from employers.
What kind of feedback?
Complaints, he says, are widespread among hiring managers about recent grads having weak writing, thin problem solving, and poor work habits.
So a disconnect between academic skills and workplace needs.
A major disconnect in his view. He insists many graduates just are not equipped to hold down a job, suggesting that the core skills employers need, critical thinking, clear communication, practical application, aren't being developed effectively on campus anymore.
He thinks they're being taught what to think, not how to think.
That's a central part of his argument here, yeah. Less about developing independent reasoning, more about absorbing pre-approved viewpoints.
And this ties into the intellectual side, too. You mentioned foundational thinkers.
Yes, he uses anecdotes from his campus visits, those prove-me-wrong tours. He describes encounters with students who, he claims, couldn't recognize names he considers foundational to Western thought or American civics.
Like who, for example? Plato, Locke, Adam Smith.
Exactly those kinds of figures, people central to philosophy, political thought, economics. His point is, if students lack this basic grounding, this shared intellectual framework,
How can they engage deeply with complex issues today?
right, or even have a common basis for discussion and debate, For Kirk, these anecdotes are symptoms of a larger problem.
Which is?
That if the classroom isn't actually sharpening thinking skills or building real knowledge, then the diploma becomes less about competence and more about
Oh,
what? Signaling.
just showing you're part of the educated class. A credential without the substance.
That's the implication. It fundamentally challenges that core promise of higher ed, that it cultivates smart, capable people ready for the world. It makes you question what that degree really signifies.
Which brings us, I think, inevitably to Pillar 3, the one that probably gets the most heated, the campus culture argument.
Yeah, this is where Kirk really leans into the critique of indoctrination and free speech issues. He devotes a lot of space in The College Scam to this claim. College indoctrinates students and represses speech.
And his argument is that universities aren't open to different viewpoints anymore.
Essentially, yes. He contends that many campuses actively discourage ideological diversity. He describes a system where both what's taught in class and the social norms on campus push students towards what he sees as a uniform left-wing worldview.
Not just exposure, but actual pressure to conform.
That's his claim. He argues it's a systematic effort, and students who dissent, who hold conservative or different views, face either subtle pressure or sometimes even open hostility. Self-censorship becomes the norm for them.
He has that line about minds being welded shut.
Yeah, it's a powerful image. He writes that universities used to open students' minds and widen their horizons. Today, universities weld minds shut. He believes this actively stifles real debate and produces conformity.
So from his viewpoint, this isn't just uncomfortable, it actually harms critical thinking.
Absolutely. If you can't freely debate ideas, if certain viewpoints are off limits, how do you develop genuine critical thinking skills? He sees it producing students who follow dogma rather than reasoning independently.
Now, there's definitely another side to this argument, isn't there? Critics see this very differently.
Oh, completely differently. Many argue that what Kirk calls indoctrination is actually just education. Encouraging critical thinking means prompting students to question things, including traditional authorities and established institutions.
So challenging norms is part of the process.
From their perspective, yes. They'd say exposing students to uncomfortable facts or critical perspectives, like the example Kirk uses about the sugar industry's history.
Kirk mentions that.
Yeah, he critiques a professor for discussing the industry's mistreatment of workers, saying it makes students feel guilty. Critics would counter that the professor might simply be telling the truth, presenting historical context.
And that questioning powerful industries or historical narratives is what education should do.
Exactly. They argue that this kind of critical inquiry might lead students to question existing power structures or conservative values, but that's a legitimate outcome of learning, not nefarious indoctrination. It's about creating informed citizens, even if the information is challenging.
And this whole debate about campus ideology, it's not new, is it?
And not at all. You can trace this conservative critique way back. William F. Buckley's God and Man at Yale in the 1950s is a classic example.
What was Buckley arguing back then?
Interestingly, Buckley wasn't arguing for neutrality. He was arguing that Yale should be promoting specific doctrines, Christian and conservative ones, and was failing to do so because of a perceived liberal drift even back then. So this concern has deep roots.
Fascinating. So Kirk is tapping into a long-standing conservative concern about universities.
Very much so. And he brings his argument on culture to a really blunt conclusion.
Which is?
When he's asked point blank if he advises young people not to get a degree, his answer is just, yes, absolutely.
No hesitation.
None apparent. And
Yeah.
he sums it up with that three-word motto, anything but college.
Anything but college.
Right.
That's quite a statement. Very direct.
It's a direct challenge to decades of conventional wisdom.
Okay, so if it's anything but college, what are the alternatives he pushes in the book? What's the positive vision?
Well, he starts from the belief that the standard one-size-fits-all bachelor's degree is the wrong default for the majority. It just doesn't make sense for everyone.
So what's the right approach then?
He pushes this idea of purpose first, then path.
Meaning?
So figure out your goals first. What kind of life do you want? What career are you aiming for? What skills do you actually need? Start there, then find the most direct, cheapest way to get those skills and experiences. Don't just default to a 4-year campus map.
So be strategic, not just follow the herd.
Exactly. Replace the automatic assumption of college with an individualized plan.
And what specific paths does he highlight?
He's big on vocational and technical training. Apprenticeships, trade schools, specific community college programs that give you hands-on marketable job skills, often much faster and cheaper.
Makes sense. What else?
Experiential learning is huge for him. Take that gap year, like we mentioned. Get an unpaid internship, learn by doing, he stresses. See if you even like a field before sinking money into staying it. Or just get an entry-level job and work your way up.
Real-world experience over classroom theory, basically.
That's a big emphasis. And he also points towards self-directed learning.
Like online courses.
Yeah, free online courses, MOOCs, building skills independently, or even starting your own business, the entrepreneurial route. He argues the internet gives you tools to learn what you need without the formal institution sometimes.
So prioritizing skills and competence over just the credential.
That's the core message. Demonstrable ability matters more.
And how does this connect to the job market? Does he think employers are catching on?
Yes, this is a key part of his argument. He believes that the traditional gatekeeping function of the college degree, needing one just to get your foot in the door, is eroding.
You mean companies are starting to care less about the diploma?
He argues they increasingly value demonstrable skills and drive more than the piece of paper. They're looking for people who can actually do the job, regardless of where or even if they went to college. He thinks skills-based hiring is the future.
That's a pretty big claim about the labor market shifting.
It is. And it's a direct challenge to you, the listener, to maybe rethink your own assumptions about what's required for a successful career. Do you really need that degree for the path you want? Or are there other, better ways to get there?
It really pushes you to question the default path.
Definitely. He wants you to be strategic about acquiring skills, not just follow a script.
Okay, so we've laid out Kirk's case, the economics, the quality, the culture, the alternatives. It's powerful, it's provocative.
Yeah.
But it hasn't gone unchallenged, right? Let's talk about the reactions and counterarguments.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is even his staunchest critics sometimes find points where they actually agree with him, or at least acknowledge the problem he's identifying.
Really? Like what?
Well, almost everyone involved in higher ed debates acknowledges the issue of administrative bloat. The cost structures are a real concern across the board.
The high tuition, yeah. That's hard to ignore.
Right. And the idea that maybe we do require degrees for too many jobs that don't truly need them, that's getting traction too. Even the critique about, say, lavish spending on sports facilities or amenities not directly tied to academics, some critics concede those points.
So there's some common ground on diagnosing certain problems, even if they disagree fiercely on the causes or solutions.
Exactly. These issues are pretty visible and widely discussed.
But then come the big disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
Where do critics really push back hard?
Well, motivations often come up. Some critics question if Kirk's arguments stem from personal feelings, like the West Point rejection, or if it's primarily about appealing to his conservative base.
Suggesting it's more political than purely analytical.
Some make that argument, yeah. Others accuse him more directly of using misinformation, or lying by omission, basically, cherry-picking data or anecdotes to paint the bleakest possible picture.
Okay, so challenges to his methods and motives. What about the substance?
A major counterargument defends the intrinsic value of college, especially a liberal arts education. They argue it does much more than job training.
What specifically?
Things like fostering critical thinking, empathy, and civic knowledge, qualities they see as absolutely essential for citizens in a democracy.
And the fear is that discouraging college leads to
A dumber general public, some put it that bluntly, or an anti-intellectual society that's less able to grapple with complexity or resist simplistic narratives. Some even frame robust critical thinking as fundamentally antithetical to certain conservative views.
that idea, again, that education inherently challenges some worldviews.
Right. Which connects to that ignorance argument we touched on. The perspective that maybe some conservatives dislike higher ed because learning about uncomfortable historical truths like systemic racism or critiques of capitalism makes people question traditional power structures or inherited institutions.
So what Kirk sees as bias, they see as necessary historical or social analysis.
Precisely. They'd say he's framing inconvenient truths as ideological attacks.
What about his portrayal of campus life, the brainwashing and repressed speech?
Critics push back hard there, too. They argue the conservative caricature of colleges is radically out of step with the reality.
How so?
They point out most students aren't majoring in niche humanities fields known for radical theory. They're in business, engineering, health, practical stuff. They say the level of political correctness or suppression of speech is often wildly overstated for dramatic effect in conservative media.
So the average student experience is much more mundane, more focused on getting a job than Kirk suggests.
That's the counterargument. That his picture is based on isolated incidents or specific departments, not the norm.
This really leads to that fundamental philosophical question, doesn't it? What is college for?
Exactly. Is it primarily job training? Should it be? Or is its value also in providing that space for intellectual exploration, for wrestling with the big questions in life? Philosophy, ethics, history, even if it doesn't directly lead to a specific job skill.
And critics might see Kirk's anything but college stance as, what, elitist?
Some do frame it that way. They argue that suggesting higher learning and deep intellectual engagement aren't for everyone implies that only a select few should have that opportunity. They defend college as a potential universal right, a chance for anyone to expand their mind, not just get job training.
It's a deep disagreement about purpose and access.
It really is. And it shapes the proposed solutions, too.
How so?
Well, Kirk's solution is largely opt out, avoid the system. But critics, even those who agree problems exist, tend to say, let's fix the university, not burn it down.
Reform, not rejection.
Right. Address the bloat, control the costs, improve the teaching, maybe reform tenure, but preserve the institution and make it work better for everyone, keeping it accessible. It's a fundamental difference in approach.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Let's try to wrap this up. We've unpacked Charlie Kirk's The College Scam, his 10-count indictment.
Yeah. His core claims: the economic disaster fueled by federal loans, creating a debt trap, the decline in educational quality, not delivering needed skills or reasoning, and the campus culture of alleged indoctrination and stifled speech.
And we've also looked at his clear call for alternatives, his push for trade schools, apprenticeships, experiential learning, self-direction, that purpose first, then path idea.
He's not just tearing down, he is pointing towards other routes he sees as more viable and valuable for most young people.
And it's undeniable. His book has fueled a massive ongoing national debate. His arguments hit hard, they resonated widely, even as they drew really sharp criticism.
It tapped into very real anxieties and frustrations that many people feel about the current state of higher education. It's a conversation we needed to have, regardless of where you land on his specific points.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Whether you read Kirk's arguments and find them deeply concerning, maybe even offensive, or whether you see them as a necessary wake-up call about real systemic flaws.
His 10-count indictment really forces you to confront some fundamental questions. What is the true purpose of college today? Is the current model serving America's youth effectively? And what pathways do best prepare them for the future?
This deep dive has hopefully given you a solid understanding of Charlie Kirk's compelling and yes, controversial case in The College Scam. You've heard the arguments, the reasoning behind them, and the counterpoints they've generated.
If we've sparked your curiosity, the next step is clear.
Right. Pick up the book itself. The College Scam: How America's Universities Are Bankrupting and Brainwashing Away the Future of America's Youth. Dive into his full arguments, weigh the evidence he presents, and decide for yourself. Are America's universities failing its youth? It's a critical question, and this book offers one very powerful, very provocative answer you want to engage with directly.